Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Welcome back to Dynasty HeatSeeker Streaming Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Butts, here with Jason, Anthony, and Rob. Hopefully everybody's having a good week so far. It's only Tuesday, but we got some camps opening up. So how you doing today, Rob?
I'm good. Excited for camp to open up, football to start happening, and hopefully it sticks with us for a while.
Absolutely. Jason, what about you, buddy?
Doing great.
Great. Nice, short, and sweet.
Yes, sir.
Anthony.
Yeah, same. Doing great. Great to be on. Good to see everyone again, and hopefully we have a great show.
I fully expected the long-winded answer there out of Anthony. He shortened it up quite a bit, though. So today we are talking Dynasty sleepers and stashes. I know everybody has a different view on what is what. And I'll share my opinion on a sleeper as somebody that could come out this season and perform above expectations, while a stash is more of a guy that I'm looking for maybe a little bit of production out of, nothing great, but somebody that maybe in 2021 is going to be a guy that is in the sleeper position a year from now. Just before we get into this, Jason, do you view these any differently?
Not really. I mean, obviously, there's going to be guys that are going to hit here and there, but obviously you don't value them too high. But I mean, they could provide you value throughout the season and maybe become a full-time starter for you.
Is that your sleeper or your stash player, or do you view them like the same, basically?
Kind of both. Yeah, basically both.
Okay, Anthony.
Yeah, I kind of view them the same way too. I mean, I think there is a difference between a sleeper and a stash. I mean, stash is kind of more of like a could be prayer type of play, but I still think that they're pretty similar when it comes to dynasty players.
And Rob.
Yeah, sleeper, like you said, kind of the deep guy who could have an impact. The stash more, probably looking a year or two out with development for when they're going to become the guy that you can play, kind of a stash, more a guy you'd stick to a taxi squad than be having taken up space on your bench.
Awesome. So I think we all view them pretty similarly. Nothing drastically different here. At one point, this episode was titled "Guys Who Suck Who May End Up Good." Just because there's such a difference in thought process between, who fits what mold, and, are rookies really sleepers? And, there's a lot of different viewpoints there. So, take it as you will as you watch this. Your meaning may be a little bit different than ours, but now you know what we're thinking as we go into this. But first, why don't we get into some news and notes? And one guy that was probably on some sleeper list because the Washington Football Club has limited amount of weapons, but Harmon tears his ACL and is going to be out for the season. Anthony, you're nodding your head there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought Harmon was going to have a good year. Last year, his rookie season, he had I think 30 catches, 360 yards, I think I saw. So it's kind of unfortunate that he's going to miss the year. Although if you're going to miss a year, maybe this is the right one to miss. So in that sense, he could be a little more optimistic. But, I think it elevates a lot of the other guys on that team. McLaurin a little bit, Sims a little bit. Coincidentally, we're going to get into a lot of these guys on this show. So, we can talk about it then.
Awesome. Jason, did you have any initial reactions to this news?
I was looking forward to watching and see what he could do. I mean, like you said, there aren't a lot of options there for the Washington team, whatever you guys going to call them. But yeah, I was looking forward to seeing what he had, but it's unfortunate what happened, and I guess we'll look forward to next year and see maybe if he can make a splash.
Rob.
Yeah, the opportunity may have been there. I viewed Kelvin Harmon still as a guy who was more going to be a guy who needed to be stashed. He didn't do a whole lot rookie year, and I didn't expect him to do much this year. But I think it opens up some exciting possibilities for some other guys as they have gotten a few more weapons in there. So hopefully they can find a way to make that all gel and have a little bit more exciting offense than they had last year.
Yeah, for me, it just sucks because that number 2 wide receiver spot is completely open. There's not a guy on that team that is head and shoulders above anybody else, in my opinion. So, for a guy that going into last year's NFL draft was considered one of the top wide receivers in that class, and then fell in the NFL draft, and then obviously that whole Washington offense outside of McLaurin, and really McLaurin wasn't even really consistent. He had a monster like first 4 games, and then disappeared for a while, and then had a couple towards the end of the season. But it was a very inconsistent offense. The quarterback play wasn't great. Haskins did play better towards the end of the year, but there was some opportunity for whoever takes that number 2 job going into this year. So it does suck to see a kid get hurt, especially since his downturn since that NFL draft has been one of the most drastic here in recent years for a highly touted prospect. Second piece of news is Raheem Mostert and his trade request from the 49ers. Obviously, Jason runs our Instagram, but I put out a couple graphics this week on Instagram after I mapped all the running back statistics for per touch. Like I took every rush into account for running backs with 80 or more carries, and Raheem Mostert ran away with that the other guys in that backfield. Breda and Coleman were both at the bottom of most of the statistics, and Mostert was literally, he ranked elite in more categories than any other running back that had 80 plus carries. The dude was very efficient last year. They need him. Their other running backs are bad. Jerick McKinnon can't carry the ball. He might be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's not going to be able to rush 180 times. I don't even think he's made it to the regular season the past 2 seasons. He's been hurt before they even got to the season. Does he have a carry with the 49ers since they gave him that big contract in the regular season? No, he doesn't. So, he can't take the load. Coleman was inefficient. Obviously, they traded Breda away. So they really need him for that offense to go, especially with Debo going down and not knowing how that foot's going to heal. Rob, did you have any other thoughts on Mostert in that trade request?
Yeah, I also don't think he's going anywhere. I mean, it's a 28-year-old back who's been a journeyman. The market's dry right now for running backs. Devonta Freeman's still sitting out there as a free agent. Lamar Miller, there's been no interest or very minimal interest. I mean, nobody needs a running back at this point. Nobody's going to trade for him. He's stuck playing the year there, and unless he decides he's going to hold out last minute, and that makes no sense. So I just don't see anything changing for this season.
I will say one thing, because everybody keeps saying this journeyman thing. He hasn't been a journeyman running back. He came into the league as a wide receiver out of Purdue, who was more of a returner and everything and didn't really have a position, and then was a special teamer. What he's doing at running back has been great. Now, yes, he is an undrafted free agent, and he has bounced around a little bit, but he's solidified himself as a running back in the past 2 years. He broke his arm 2 years ago, or else we might have been having this conversation last year. But he has been nothing but efficient since given running back opportunities. So I will say that. I'm not necessarily arguing that he's, this guy isn't a guy looking for a huge contract, but he needs to get paid because he is 28. And if he is going to be taking most of the carries for them this year, I would want to get paid too. Jason, any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, he's looking to get paid, so I mean, it doesn't make sense why he'd want to stay there if they're not going to give him that contract. So I don't blame him at all. But at the same time, they just went to the Super Bowl and he helped them out big time. So why not stick with that team and see if you can earn a contract?
Yep. And Anthony. Wait, you're a
Yeah, I
49er
agree.
fan, right?
I
Yes,
am
okay.
a 49er
I'd
fan.
love to hear from you.
And so I listen to a lot of talk radio out here, and a lot of the talk radio talk is basically, why would he do this? It doesn't make any sense. Even if they wanted to trade him, now they lose all their leverage anyway, because now they know he's disgruntled. So no one's going to offer anything, worth a damn anyway. So I agree with what you guys are saying. I think he's stuck here. He has 2 years left on his deal. It was reported he's looking for what Tevin Coleman's making, which is just like a few $1 million more. I don't see it happening. So
Tevin Coleman's $5 million a
think-
year. I remember that specifically because the Bears passed on him and signed Cordarrelle Patterson for $5 million a year, which at the time I thought was crazy. But then Coleman was very inefficient last year, minus like the 4 touchdown game. But
Yeah. So yeah, I think Mostert's going to stay. So I don't think there's anything really to worry about, but it's something to obviously keep an eye on.
I will say there is one team that drastically needs a running back that can run the ball, and we're gonna get into that later in this episode. But first, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform, make sure you hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you know every time that we go live. Roto Heat does go live Monday through Friday, 9:30, with different shows for different formats. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Okay, we're going to get right into it then. You guys already see the name up on the board of our first Dynasty sleeper, and this comes via Anthony, and that is Russell Gage from the Falcons. Why don't you just dive right into Russell Gage and why you like him?
Yeah, of course. I first got to give a shout out to our boy Sully, because Sully recently wrote an article that touched on a lot of what I'm going to touch on with Russell Gage here. But essentially, Russell Gage was a guy who kind of came out of nowhere last year, and it was after Mohamed Sanu was traded to the Patriots. And prior to being traded, prior to Sanu being traded, Gage was wide receiver 120 on the year. So, I mean, virtually nothing. And after that, he turned into wide receiver 49. So he's in the top 50 for wide receivers now. Now, part of that, and Sully also mentioned this, but part of that is because Austin Hooper was out for a few games at the end of the year. And we know that Austin Hooper is not, on the Falcons any longer. During those 3 games, Hooper was out and Sanu was no longer on the team. Russell Gage posted 15 receptions, 145 yards, and a touchdown. He was wide receiver 27 during that time frame. So I think you're looking at, if that trend kind of continues, you're looking at wide receiver 3, 4 numbers, because it's a little misleading to just say, well, Sanu and Hooper are gone, so Gage is going to be the guy. Hayden Hurst is on the teams. I don't think he's quite Hooper level, but I think with Gage, you're looking at easily a wide receiver 3, 4, and you can purchase him for much, much, much cheaper than that. So he's certainly someone that I'm targeting in a lot of leagues and think that a lot of people should have their eye on.
Jason, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I like every point that he made there, and he'd be a guy that I'd like to take a flyer on for sure. I'm higher on Hayden Hurst than most, so I feel like a lot of the target's going to go his way. They got Ridley, and then they got Julio, so I mean someone's going to have to fight for the ball. So, and Ryan likes to swing the ball around, so I see the opportunity for Gage for sure.
Rob.
Yeah, I think for as was said, with Hooper being gone, either Hurst or Gage have to pick up some of that. Definitely, I think for Gage to be relevant, he's got to pick up more of that than he's done in the past. he's averaging just last year just 3 catches a game. Even those games where he was playing without Austin Hooper, it was just 5 catches a game. And for the routes that he's running, that's not a great production yet for him. But I think the opportunity is there, and I do like Russell Gage and definitely try to, get him at the end of my bench in a lot of places. And even if Hurst ends up being just like Hooper, you never know if Julio goes down or what can happen. Where maybe his opportunity can expand, and I think he's good enough that if he gets that expanded opportunity, he'll be successful.
Yeah, my thinking here is not necessarily that he can't be somebody that you can use in your flex. When I hear wide receiver 3, it boggles my mind. I don't think there's a shot that he ends up a wide receiver 3. He's the wide receiver 3 on his team, and I do believe that Hurst is going to be heavily involved. I'm not as high on him as most either, but when you look at Julio, Ridley, Gage, Hurst, and Gurley, who is going to be used out of the backfield as a pass catcher, I can't see him getting enough without an injury to somebody to be a productive fantasy guy week to week and somebody that you can put in your lineup and not be worried about. And that's my only thing with him, is that I think it takes injuries for him to get there. Because when I look at that list, he's easily with Hurst at the back end of that. Like, Ridley's more talented. Obviously, Julio is one of the best receivers in the league. I think people are really sleeping on Gurley in this offense, but he's probably going to catch 70, 80 passes out of the backfield unless he misses time. But yeah, I mean, I not that I don't think he could be a serviceable, second flex to maybe a flex if you're starting 3 receivers. I can't see wide receiver 3. That one boggles my mind just a little bit. All right, second. I'm clicking buttons the wrong way. Second on our list is Jason with what player, Jason?
Indy Isabella, Arizona Cardinals. He was a second-round pick. He's projected to be probably the 3rd or 4th wide receiver on their team. But then again, the team loves to use 4 wide receiver sets. They love to pass. They played an up-tempo style, and then they passed for 60% of the time last year. And speed kills. He made most of the opportunity that he did have. He had one big boom week for sure. He's got to beat out Butler and Keyshawn Johnson, so I think he's got a really good opportunity to take over and blow the top off the defense.
Rob, what are you thinking there on Indy Isabella?
Yeah, a guy who I like. I think he's got talent, but another one I think I see more as a stash, longer term. Right now, I don't see how he's anything but wide receiver 4 or 5 on that team, with D-Hop,
Kirk,
Larry Fitzgerald, and Christian Kirk. And so, I mean, those guys are going to take up 80-90% of the passing opportunities, I think. So what's going to be left for Isabella is going to be very small. And you mentioned it. He's also got to fight with Hakeem Butler and possibly with Keyshawn Johnson for those catches as well. And I know that they had other guys in that wide receiver room as well who I can't think of, but those other second-year guys for sure are going to be battling. I just don't think there's enough there to have an impact this season, again, without injury. And, and if I have a short bench, I don't want to, waste that spot. But if I got the room, I'm going to stash him at the back again and hope for the long-term success that he kind of fits with that profile that we were given last year with him coming out.
Anthony, what were you thinking there on Indy Isabella?
Yeah, I agree with Rob. I think it's a little too crowded. Isabella's kind of more of a slot receiver, and with Fitz and Kirk, I just don't really see a lot of opportunity for him this year. So I think if you have the room, you can stash them. I said it kind of reminds me of last week. I'll take anyone if there's room. I'll take them, but I really don't see a lot of opportunity for them this year.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, Cliff wants to spread the ball around, but last year they didn't really have the weapons to do that. So what you've seen out of their third and fourth receiver wasn't what you would want to see out of a fantasy asset. Especially like when Kirk was out and, Larry Fitz had to be your number one. Like, Larry Fitz just isn't a number one anymore. So I think there's plenty to go around for the wide receivers, right? They're going to run 4 wide receiver sets. They don't run the tight end out very often, or not nearly as often as most teams do. But we also seen that when Drake came in, that running game took a whole different approach with that. It was very inefficient when David Johnson was the running back. When he missed, we saw the backup there to David Johnson had a big game. That was really the only game that was an efficient running game before that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out this year with them wanting to spread the ball around. I think that, D-Hop could actually see way less targets than he normally sees, but just because they spread the ball around so much. So, if he does work into that, third wide receiver, fourth wide receiver, because it depends on how you view Larry Fitz. He could easily see as many targets as him if he gets that next wide receiver spot. He could surprise some people, but it is crowded, and it is hard to predict, and it'll probably be at least mid-season before you're comfortable starting Isabella, even if you see him do some stuff at the beginning part of the year. Okay.
But I think that would be what we're hoping for,
right?
That he gets to that point. Which, in that sense, yeah, he is a sleeper. Then, my concern is just when you got those 3 big guys that they're gonna take so much of that, even if it's a 650, 700 pass offense. So much of it's gonna flow through the other 3 that it's just gonna be like picking up loose change for the younger wide receivers in that room for this.
Yeah,
year. I think that opportunity starts to come when Larry backs off and retires after the season.
I just don't think that Larry's a 130 target guy. So even if the other 2, even if D-Hop and Kirk get 150 each, which is a good amount, that's only 300 of the passes. So where are the other 300, 350 going? He could be a 100 target guy, and that could provide a little bit of value for you. My first guy up.
I'd be happy if you was.
Do what?
I'd be happy if
he
was.
Absolutely.
I mean, that would be awesome if he was.
It's just if they throw 600, 650 times, then there's going to be plenty to go around. Fitz is just not a 150 target guy anymore. He's more, I think he's there as much to be a wide receiver coach as he is to be a wide receiver player, and he just loves the game. Like, he's one of my favorite players, ever. The dude is amazing, and he's got more tackles than he has drop passes. So what more can you ask for out of a wide receiver, right? My first player up is Devin Funchess. There's always hype for Adams. He's a top, probably 3 receiver in the league and in fantasy. As long as he's healthy, he produces. There's hype for Lazard because they didn't go out and get anybody that people loved. But they did bring in Funchess, who I was very high on last year before Andrew Luck retired. And then obviously the injury hit, and we didn't get to see Funchess in the Colts. But now he is coupled with a quarterback that is pissed off. And nobody likes, and nobody, definitely not me, likes Aaron Rodgers when he's pissed off. I have a feeling that Rodgers is going to put up a big year, and I think Funchess is going to be right in the middle of that. I think that, Lazard is not a sleeper because he performed with Rodgers last year towards the end of the year, and his name's been all over the place since the draft and them not bringing anybody in free agency. So there's Devin Funchess, who is basically free in Dynasty leagues, and you've got him coupled with one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And I'll take that price all day, every day. I think he's easily going to outperform his price. Even if it's just for this year, it's worth it for a team that's competing. So Funchess is my first guy for sure. Jason, I see you nodding your head. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great selection. Personally, I stay away from Packer players, but hey, I'm trying to win, so I'll play him if I have to, and I'll pick him up and see what I can do with him. But yeah, like you said, he's got a great opportunity to be, a wide receiver too with Aaron Rodgers, who can sling the ball, and it's pretty exciting.
Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a good pick. I prefer Lazard, and Rodgers has been talking up Lazard quite a bit in this offseason. I agree that Lazard at this point isn't much of a sleeper. So I agree with you that, Funchess is truly the right sleeper on the Packers at this point. And I agree 100%. Price-wise, I'd rather have the Funchess too, because I think that their value is going to be really comparable. And so I know Funchess is a heck of a lot cheaper right now. So of the two, I would prefer Funchess as well.
All right. And then we've got our Packer fan over here, Rob.
Yeah, I really didn't like Devin Funchess when they signed him. Thought for sure we were going to draft a couple wide receivers, and it wouldn't matter that they signed Funchess, but that didn't happen. So yeah, but I think he's going to have the opportunity to be valuable. Obviously, the last couple of years were down for him a bit. His best finish being a wide receiver 22. I think he could match that. That was back in 2017. I think it's possible that he could be sitting right in that range. And for a guy you're getting for nothing, that's pretty darn good value if you can get low-end wide receiver 2 numbers or high-end wide receiver 3 numbers from him.
My last point that I'll make is that one thing people forget is the last year in Carolina, he was playing with an inaccurate and injured Cam Newton, and then obviously didn't play last year. And not only that, but the Panthers used him wrong. I think that LaFleur is going to be smarter with the way they use Funchess, and he's going to act more like a Michael Thomas player. I've compared them before. He's not as good as Michael Thomas. That's not what I'm saying, but they're a similar type player, whereas they don't have great top-end speed. We all know that, but they work well over the middle, and if you just put Funchess on the outside and tell him to beat cornerbacks, it's not going to happen. If you can get him matched up with linebackers, he can win those matches and he can be productive. So if they use him in that way, I think that it's a lot better than what we've seen late in that Panthers career and what I thought the Colts were going to be able to do with him last year. But obviously didn't come to fruition. Rob, go ahead.
Oh, before I switch up to my guy, I like that point though, using him as kind of a big slot, more in a Evan Ingram type role where you see some of these athletic tight ends move out to. I think that could be much better for his value. I agree with that point.
And
completely.
you also seen Green Bay, and obviously it wasn't LaFleur, but that's what they were trying to do with ESB before he got hurt. They ran him out of the slot late in that season, his rookie season, as a big slot guy. He's got more speed than Funchess, but obviously we haven't seen it pan out for him either. But that's why I think that could be a possible way that they use him, because Alan Lazard is better on the outside than Funchess is. That's not the question in this spot, for sure. So Rob, your first guy is
Steven Sims with the Washington Football Club there, and I thought he had a pretty decent rookie year. He had some good games towards the end of the season, and I don't see who else even before the Kelvin Harmon injury really fit his profile on that team. He's kind of that smaller, quick receiver kind of guy off the line. That guy you're going to hit the short targets. He's not going to be up necessarily winning jump ball contests on the outside. So where he was sitting in that wide receiver room, I saw a pretty defined role for him. And I still see that. I mean, I'm not worried about anybody on that depth chart, a Trey Quinn, a Cody Latimer. they've been around a long time, and they've never really been anything. So I think he's going to be one of the 3 starting wide receivers on this team. And I think he's going to, hopefully have better quarterback play from Dwayne Haskins, who I think gets a lot of grief, but he's got a big arm. He's pretty accurate most of the time. Where he gets himself out at being accurate is when he runs into those issues with his footwork and not, getting through his progressions in a timely manner. And I think in year 2, he's going to do that and not end up rushing because he didn't progress from one receiver to the next. So I think that offense is going to take a little step forward at the least. It all kind of hinges on Dwayne Haskins, and I like that for what that does for Steven Sims.
Jason.
Yeah, I like it. I think the Washington club is going to be passing a lot, and the opportunity's there with Calvin Harmon going out, so why not? It's going to be there. So, and I like Haskins. I think he's a good passer, but he's just, he's young, so he's still learning. So, I think a lot of the wide receivers are going to have a great opportunity this year.
Anthony.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think with the low risk, especially with Harmon going down now and losing the year, I think if you have their roster space, Sims is a good bet.
Here's my whole thing with just anybody on the Redskins. We think the Redskins are going to be bad, but we think I personally think the Redskins defense is going to be solid. I wouldn't say good, but they put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and if they take another step forward, they could move into that top 8, 9 defense. So if we think the team's going to be bad, but the defense is going to be good, then that means the offense isn't scoring very many points, which means there's not a whole lot of fantasy production to go around, and that's where my issue with the any Redskins players not named McLaurin, who I'm not as high on as most, but I think is obviously the guy out of the wide receivers, a guy that could easily soak up 30% of the target share. That's where I have trouble with this offense. A lot of the offense could come out of the backfield. They've only got like 9 running backs on that team. But yeah, that'd be my only thing. Nothing against Sims, but if everybody's predicting Washington to be bad, but to have a solid defense, then that means the offense isn't doing a whole lot. So if they end up fitting that mold, then I just don't know how much fantasy production there is to go around on that team in 2020. Maybe that improves going forward, 2021, 2022.
And we kind of had our thing, like you said earlier, with our old name, right? That this was guys who aren't necessarily good that can be great. Well, I mean, what are you thinking about for Steven Sims? Maybe a wide receiver 4, 5, 6, a guy you can plug into your flex. But there's upside is there that he showed in the last 3 weeks. I mean, Washington was a bad team last year. Last 3 weeks, he averaged 20 points in PPR leagues a game. It was, I believe it's 19.8 points per game. Had 4 touchdowns in that time. So he can go on those little spurts. And for a guy you're going to plug in as a bye-week flex and that kind of stuff, I mean, it kind of fits the sleeper mold to me. I'm not expecting when I put him on this list for him to jump out and be in every week, the guy you're starting at your wide receiver 3 position. But I think he's a guy who's got value, will have value at times and be in your lineup at times throughout the year.
Anthony, what were you thinking? Did I already ask you?
Yeah, you did. But I agree with Rob on that last point too. And I do expect the Redskins to have a good defense, or the Washington football team to have a good defense. And I do expect Haskins to improve. I do expect the rushing game to improve. So I don't think they're going to be terrible. I think they're going to be pretty good. So I think, what's built into the Sims low value at this point is that everyone thinks that the team's not going to be very good. That's kind of baked into his value. And if they do overall perform better, then I think that you're going to get some added value because of that.
The reason why I think his value is lower is because it's not the same offense that was there last year. It's an offense that now has Antonio Gandy Golden, Antonio Gibson, Bryce Love back healthy, Darius Geis healthy for now. There's 4 more names that enter, even though we can say Harmon was subtracted, but he wasn't really anything last year either. So that's the issue with, predicting who's going to be the guy that scores fantasy points, is there's a lot of names on that offense, even though we're not thinking that offense is going to be very good. So does McLaurin get like a 30% market share, and then everybody else gets like a 5 to 10% market share,
Right.
and we don't get any, maybe a big game here and there, but not consistent play out of them, and that's more my concern, not necessarily his talent or anything like that. Okay, so next guy is Anthony, and this one's going to be good.
Yeah, my second sleeper is Boston Scott. I've really liked Scott. Last year, I had him in a lot of leagues. People kind of gave me some crap for it because I was always kind of pumping him up, and then he ended the year and kind of kicked ass. So I think, honestly, him and Sanders are two of the biggest winners after the NFL draft. A lot of people expected the Eagles to draft a running back, and they didn't. I think they added Michael Warren as an undrafted free agent, but I mean, really, that backfield as of right now is pretty much solidified. There were rumors that Devonta Freeman, they were interested in him, but that never panned out. So at this point, I feel really confident that Boston Scott adds a lot of that PPR extra value, kind of like a Darren Sproles. And I really see him having a good year. The last 4 regular season games, he had 38 carries, 151 yards, and 4 touchdowns on the ground. He added almost 200 yards receiving on 23 catches. So, I mean, especially in PPR, I think you can easily get him for like a 3rd-round pick, and I think he's going to really benefit your team.
Rob.
Yeah, I think there's no way that Doug Peterson is using one running back all the time. So there's going to be carries to be split, with Miles Sanders. He doesn't really have that workhorse back idea. I still feel like they're going to bring in a Devonta Freeman, a Lamar Miller, somebody as we get closer to the season to share that backfield role as well. But as you said, at the end of the season, he finished well. So, I mean, if he is that number 2 guy, he's got value there. If they start splitting it further down to 3 guys or whatnot with a lot of touches, that value diminishes some. But again, a guy, in the bottom of your flex, I think has value. I don't see him as one of your starting running backs. If you're relying on that, I think it's a little bit too much. But yeah, another guy who fits well in that kind of that sleeper game. And if Miles Sanders goes down, he's got a big role ahead for him.
Jason.
Yeah, I like the prospect of Boston Scott. I mean, he's a great athlete, but the thing is he's a little too small. I don't think he can handle, the carries. I don't think they're going to expect him to, though, of course. But he could be a good satellite back. I think the opportunity will be there for him if they, like Rob said, unless they don't bring someone else in. But I have a feeling that they will. It's only a matter of time. But like I said, I like the athlete of Boston Scott and what he can do and what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, Devonta Freeman and Lamar Miller scare me none. I think they're both Jags. Devonta Freeman had one monster year, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield, but that's not really what they need if they bring in a back. I've actually seen that Philly could be interested in Mostert. That's one team that I've seen mentioned. Yeah, I think that he's going to have standalone value this year. I think people expect Miles Sanders to get a bigger workload, which is not surprising. Miles Sanders is the better back in that backfield. But Doug Peterson has never given 200 carries to a running back before. So even if you have the argument that, well, he's also never had a Miles Sanders before, how much do you think he's going to go over that? Do you think he's going to give Miles Sanders 300 carries? Because I can't see it. So I think there's going to be a split there. I do agree. Boston Scott isn't going to be your guy that gets 15 carries a game. He's probably going to be in the 8 to 10 range per game, but he's going to be an asset catching the ball out of the backfield as we seen late last year. And I think these guys are going to be a dynamic duo out of that backfield. The other stat is Doug Peterson's had like a minimum of 3 guys every year get 50 carries plus and average over 4.5 yards per carry. Like, they are just an efficient ground game, and part of the reason I think is because he keeps his guys fresh. He keeps them moving in and out, and he doesn't overwork any of them, and that's why guys that don't have the big names have had success in that Philly backfield. Whether you're talking the Corey Clements or the Smallwoods, and then you can just go on and on down to like Kenyon Barner. All these guys were efficient in that backfield, even though they didn't have huge numbers. So I think Boston Scott's just another one that's gonna be in there, and after a couple weeks in the season, you're gonna feel comfortable throwing him in your flex spot because he's probably gonna catch 4 to 6 balls out of the backfield and get 8 to 10 carries, and he's gonna help you. I think for sure. And then if a Miles Sanders injury happens, then the wheels come off, and you might have a running back 2 on your hands. High-end running back 2. Next up, we have Jason.
Yeah, my guy is Antonio Gibson on the Washington club. He's a versatile weapon. He last year he was mainly a wide receiver, and then they asked him to do some running too. So he had 14 yards per touch, which was pretty good running the ball, and he has an excellent athletic profile. Even his coach that drafted him compared him to the skill set of CMC. So you got Darius Geis in the backfield, but we all know what he can do, and he's a good back, but he's always hurt. So it's only a matter of time before he gets popped, and then in goes Antonio Gibson, in my opinion. They also have APs, but I don't think he's going to offer much value. I just think he's more just a 5-touch guy here and there. They're not going to ask much of him, but I like Antonio Gibson. They can put him anywhere, literally, and just get him the ball. I think that's what they're going to do, because they don't have any other weapons, in my opinion, besides, Scary Terry, and then they got guys. But other than that, they're working with crumbs, in my opinion.
Anthony.
Yeah, I like Antonio Gibson, don't get me wrong. He's kind of like Ty Montgomery all over again, except that backfield's really crowded, in my opinion. You got Geis, you have AP, you have Bryce Love coming back. So I'm just not quite sure he's going to really have the opportunity. I think that they have him, and they're going to use him, and like Jason said, get him the ball in certain spots. I don't really see him coming and taking a lot of carries, but there is boom potential. Like, it could happen. So in that sense, I understand the pick here, but of a lot of these other guys we're talking about, I'd rather have the roster space on someone else.
Yeah, I'll go next here. And this goes right into what we were talking about. We were talking about Sims. You just named 3 guys in the backfield. We've named 3 guys at wide receiver. These are both positions that Antonio Gibson plays, and that's what worries me, is that there's 3 other running backs, there's 3 other receivers. Where does this guy fit in? And if he gets moved to wide receiver, are we nearly as excited about him? The only reason why I wouldn't call him a sleeper is because I think that his price is high enough that if he busts, it stings a little bit. Not a lot, but it does sting a little bit, and that would be my only thought there with Antonio Gibson. Rob?
Yeah, I agree with that, and I'm really torn on him. Like, I think, talking about the athleticism and that, he seems to have all that to be successful. But, 77 college touches, that still just throws me that we can have this guy who is so highly thought of for the NFL, and he had 77 college touches. Either that's the worst coaching group in college football to not use a weapon like that, or it's a lot of athleticism and flash and not a lot of substance. I don't know how to see it yet. And I think for the price point he went at, it was too big of a gamble for me. So it's not a guy I'm really holding anywhere. And so, you know, I just don't see it. I'm just too torn by his production versus his athleticism, and they don't seem to mesh enough for me to feel confident supporting him.
I can't disagree with that either. 77 touches. I didn't even realize it was that few in college. But I will say that's one reason why Raheem Mostert wasn't highly touted when he was coming out, because he didn't have very many touches in college either. But yeah, I don't think he's a bad talent. I just don't know. That Washington Redskins team just scares me, if I'm being completely honest. I'll just rather have not any Washington players on my rosters. My next player is Justin Jackson, running back, Los Angeles Chargers. This one was super easy for me. I couldn't believe he wasn't on the list. Last year, obviously, Melvin Gordon sat out. Justin Jackson didn't get a bunch of carries during those games, but this guy was hyper efficient with the touches that he got during the season. But this season's a little bit different, right? There's no Melvin Gordon coming back after 5 weeks. Like, everybody knew Melvin Gordon was coming back, so you could give Austin Eckler most of the carries and not worry about him breaking down, because you knew Melvin Gordon was going to come back and he was going to get all the carries. This year's different. Austin Eckler can't carry the ball that many times throughout the whole season. That's just not who he is. Justin Jackson's going to have to play a bigger role. I don't see anybody on that team that is going to take that role from him. And this is a guy that averaged almost 7 yards per carry last year, even though it wasn't a huge amount of carries. He's shown that he can be the runner on that team. So the dude's damn near free. And with that type of potential on an offense that improved their offensive line on paper, I think that he could easily outproduce where he's being drafted at. And if he gets somebody in chat said goal line work. If he gets that and produces, then this could be a dude that wins you leagues that you got for free in the offseason. Basically free in the offseason. Jason, thoughts?
I think it was a great pick. I was actually going to go with him myself. I like the prospects of him when he came into the league, and obviously they had their backs. They had Eckler and Gordon. And then he was kind of the third guy, but this year is going to be totally different. I mean, they brought in what's his name again? I'm blanking.
Josh Kelly.
Yeah, Josh Kelly. And he's going to be a rookie, but I don't think they're just going to hand him the ball. So I like the prospect of Justin Jackson taking some snaps away from Eckler, because, like you said, he's not going to be able to handle a full workload, and they like to spread him out, and they like to get him out in space. So I like the pick.
Brad's the only guy in the world that likes Joshua Kelly. Brad Menendez, our own Brad Menendez. Okay, maybe not the only guy, but the guy that likes him the most, probably. Rob, what are your thoughts here, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I like Justin Jackson as well. I've had him sitting on end of one bench since his rookie in spots. The other thing last year, with why he didn't have that much sustained production throughout the years, he was dealing with that ankle and calf injury. Started out as an ankle injury, missed a couple of weeks with that, and then I don't know if he was rushed back from that a little bit and it led to the calf injury, or if it was just separate. But that cost him a lot of time. That's why he only had 29 touches last year, or carries last year. I think he's efficient. He's a lot stronger around the goal line than he's given credit for because of his size. He's short, but he's pretty stout, heavy runner. I've actually really liked his goal line work through his first 2 seasons, and I'm hoping he gets enough chance, but I also worry a little bit about that offense because I feel like it's going to step back this year quite a bit. So, and I just don't know where they're going to fall overall as an offense. The same token, we're talking about Washington not having a great offense, but we're expecting them to get better. I'm wondering how close that gap gets between the Chargers falling back and the Redskins getting better, where that kind of marriage is if they're not side by side. But there's fewer weapons there, so there's that positive too.
That confuses me because I think that the Chargers offense gets better with Phillip Rivers out of town, with either quarterback that's in that room. It's a lot easier to catch the ball from somebody that throws it like a football rather than like a medicine ball. If we're being 100% honest, sorry Sully, I know you're watching, but Phillip Rivers looked like he was throwing a medicine ball last year. I talked in the chat, in our team chat, about the actual statistics behind Tyrod Taylor in his deep ball. Has actually been his strength in his career, whereas a lot of people think that he's not a good deep ball thrower. He actually has been. I think that offense is going to be fine, and they've improved that offensive line a little bit. Whether it's Tyrod Taylor or I don't think either of them can play as bad as Phillip Rivers did last year. That's my thing. I don't think either of them can do it.
Yeah, I think it's fine with Herbert. My concern is Taylor. I know how you feel. I feel differently about him being able to lead a highly productive offense. I mean, last year they were averaging 370 yards a game, which was in the top third of the offenses in the NFL. I just don't see that happening again. Not at that level. But I'm not expecting them to be the worst offense in the NFL necessarily either. And I don't expect the Redskins to be that because I'm hoping that they're improving. But I think if they're successful, I want them to be successful because I want Justin Jackson to be successful. I've been sitting on him for 2 seasons already, so I don't want them to not be successful but I have concerns, and I don't see it the same way you do with Tyrod. If he is the guy.
I just think that it's an insult to the Chargers to compare them to the Washington Football Club offensively. I think that they're nothing alike, and that that the Chargers are going to definitely score more points than Washington. That's my thing when saying that. I'm not saying Tyrod's going to come in and be great. Tyrod's been good in the past. I'm not saying he's going to come in and be great. I'm just saying that I think that offense can produce better than Washington's going to. I mean, do we think that Haskins is really better than Tyrod at this point? And I don't know that that's a true statement or not.
I view them similar, personally.
Right. I'm just saying that I don't. But there's more talent on Chargers. What I'm saying, Jason, what are your thoughts? Did we already do this? Because I forgot. Because I got to chime in. You got to chime in, Anthony.
Yeah, go
ahead. I don't hate the pick. I do see the opportunity there, and that's something that we've talked a lot about on this episode.
Touches equal points.
Yeah. I mean, I would personally rather own Josh Kelly. Personally, I think. You said Justin Jackson averaged like almost 7 yards a carry. Yeah, I mean, he only had 29 carries. It's such a low, you can't use that. But he has shown previously, even before this past season, he has been efficient with the ball. So I don't hate the pick. I would personally rather own Joshua Kelly. But I still think that, if you have the space, especially if you have Eckler, I'm all good with having Jackson on your squad.
Yeah, I'll just say you like bad running backs, though. We'll go there. Because now it's what is it? It's Zach Moss, Eno, and
no, I don't like Eno.
And Joshua Kelly. Next up is Rob. Who's your second player?
We'll make this one really simple. It's Reggie Donovan, and not from anything about a production standpoint or anything. This has solely to do with his position as the backup to Christian McCaffrey. Now, Christian McCaffrey has never missed a game, but he's had 729 touches in the last 2 seasons. I mean, that's a lot of touches. And at the running back position, eventually you're going to miss time. And so, for a guy who is, cheaper than cheap. I mean, you can get him for less than nothing. He's probably sitting out on your waiver wires in some leagues right now. I mean, that is worth a stash for a guy who could take over the majority of the touches if something happened to CMC. To me, that's worth it. I don't think he wouldn't be the load, carry anywhere near the load Christian McCaffrey does. I don't think he would hold up to that, but there's value there if he gets that opportunity. He was effective when he had the chances last year. Maybe it was because, oh, well, if McCaffrey's not on the field, they must be passing. And then they hand it off to him, and it's a 56-yard touchdown instead. But that's the only reason. I don't expect him to be a guy who ever plays for you if McCaffrey's healthy.
I'll go second here just because if you read my Curse of 400 touch Christian McCaffrey article, you noticed that the season after a running back has 400 touches, they average 2 less games per season. It's very likely that McCaffrey misses games this year. I'm not a Bonafan fan, but to your point, and to the point that we talked about with Justin Jackson, touches equal fantasy points. If McCaffrey sits out, Bonafan is probably going to be in your starting lineup as a flex. So we'll go straight to Jason here.
Yeah, I like the idea of it, picking up, CMC's backup and everything. But my thing is, I think the backup really is Curtis Samuel, in my opinion. I think they'll put him in the backfield just because he was a running back at Ohio State. So I mean he's handled the load, and I think that's the guy that they're going to plug in if something does happen to CMC. But I mean I do like Reggie Bonafan. I mean he's got good speed and he showed explosiveness. So I mean why not? I mean he's more of a stash for me. But like I said, I think Curtis Samuel's the guy.
See, and I would just not be stashing him because I don't think he has any future value. His only value is as a sleeper if something happens to McCaffrey, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. No, I respect that.
Leone.
Well, I don't agree with the Curtis Samuel take, but I agree with Rob that this guy, Reggie Bonafan, I had to research how to spell his name before we started the show. I mean, yeah, he's virtually free. I did see that touchdown you referenced, and he has some speed. I mean, sure, if you have CMC, I think he's almost a must-own player on your roster, especially if you don't have a lot of other running backs on your squad. And like Rob said, he's basically free, so I'm all for that.
See, I don't agree with Samuel coming out of the backfield. I do agree with Samuel getting more targets because I think those CMC targets are going to get pushed somewhere. But I also don't agree that Bonafan is the guy that you want on your roster if you have CMC. I think Bonafan is the guy you want on your roster if you don't own CMC. I'm not a handcuff guy. I think you're wasting a roster spot if you have Bonafan on your roster with CMC because you're never going to get value out of both of them. And CMC, even if he misses part this year, you're not going to get future value out of him. So that'd be all I say there. Okay, so
that, Rick, and I guess I was referencing the fact I have him in spots where I don't own a single share of CMC. So
right, I was to Anthony's point is what I was.
Yeah. And that's fair. I mean that's fair. I don't disagree with you.
Okay, so there is our list of Dynasty sleepers. Don't worry, we are not done yet. So to go down the list, we had Russell Gage, Indy Isabella, Devin Funchess, Steven Sims, Boston Scott, Antonio Gibson, Justin Jackson, and Reggie Bonafan. We are going to talk about some stashes. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, these are guys that probably aren't going to help you this year, but maybe they're guys that are on our Dynasty Sleepers list next year going into the season. So obviously the earlier you get players, the better value you can get. If you get them now while they're free, they're going to be a better value for you down the road. But before that, if you have any questions, make sure to get them in the chat after we're done with this segment. We'll take a couple seconds. And then, guys, we got to be quick on this segment. Let's not go too deep on these guys. Obviously, it's easy to like or dislike these guys because they are a little deeper than the guys we just talked about. But my list just went away. First on our list is Jason.
Yeah, my stash is Tyler Johnson from Minnesota. He was a 5th-round pick to Tampa Bay, and he was college football's most productive wide receiver the last 2 years. The reason is Tom Brady loves the slot guys, but the thing that pushes me away from putting him up in my sleeper category would be all the other weapons that they have in Tampa Bay. So I think he's more of a wait and see kind of guy.
Anthony, see a nod in your head?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think he's a great guy to target if you can, for sure.
Rob.
Yep, I'd be stashing him late as well.
Yeah, I like Tyler Johnson, but I just don't see the opportunity there unless we have an earlier season injury to the duo there in the wide receiver group. So I definitely think that he's a guy that we could see. It might take till 2022, but this is Dynasty, baby. So if we can get value out of him in 2 seasons, then I'll take it personally. Second up is Anthony.
Yeah, my stash is Antonio Gandy Golden. I think he has incredible upside. I posted a video the other day of him making the one-handed grab in practice. And, I mean, this guy's 6'4", 220, great hands. He's not the fastest guy, but he's raw. I mean, he can run routes. A lot of people say he can't run routes. He can run routes. He just needs a little bit of room to grow. And so I think that with due time, he's going to be really good in the league, and certainly someone to stash right now because the price is really cheap.
Rob.
Yeah, I like Antonio Gandy as well. I think his opportunity went up significantly now. He's got an opportunity to be that starting Z wide receiver for the Redskins is what I'm seeing. But he's the one guy that, as much as I like him this year, he'd be the guy that I at least feel is likely to put up fantasy relevant numbers this season, even as a starter. And so he's the stash for me on that team as well.
Jason.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's a stash, but the guy's a competitor, and he's got potential. So let's see what happens with him.
I just want to throw up because we've talked about 3 Washington players on this, and none of them are guys that have any have much experience or fantasy production in the past. So it's like I feel like we think this is going to be the offense of the future in Washington. I'm just going to stay away because I don't know which one it's going to be. I mean, it can't be all 3 of these guys, right? If it's all 3 of them, then we've got the Los Angeles Rams from a couple years ago, or the Saints or something, like just monster offenses putting up a bunch of numbers. So it scares me away. It scares me away from them just because I don't know who it's going to be. I think they're all fairly comparable, like skill wise and potential wise, but just makes me nervous. So I'll just go elsewhere.
That's fair.
Rob, number 3.
Right. My guy is Oh God, now I put on the spot. I can't say it.
ESB.
Yeah, ESB. Equiminius St. Brown. He's profiled similarly to some of the guys we've talked about going into their second seasons, like Steven Sims and that, where he had some flashes his rookie year. Last year was supposed to be his really big year. And then they played that preseason game on a short field in Winnipeg, and they thought he broke his ankle. He turned out to have a bad high ankle sprain. They ended up, though, putting him on IR and ending his season anyway. I think he was developing a good rapport with Rodgers previously. There's a chance he can get that back. They didn't add offensive weapons to the room. So his really big fantasy production, if he's going to have it, is still going to be another year out because this is really only his second year. But I'm excited to see how he kind of fits back into that mold, especially since the team looks pretty much the same it did last year when we were talking about his chance of success, because they haven't added anybody really to that wide receiver room. They add Devin Funchess, but they lose Jimmy Graham. So is that a wash? It's hard to say, and there's no other young weapons there.
ESB is a favorite of mine as well. This is a guy that at one point was considered the number one wide receiver in his class. Had a down final season at Notre Dame, terrible quarterback play, and then dropped in the draft because of attitude and not talent. He told everybody before the draft that he wasn't going to play special teams, and as a rookie coming in, that doesn't really help you. So he started showing the end of his rookie season. Aaron Rodgers has more than once talked glowingly about him and his work ethic and everything. They were working him into that big slot receiver role. MVS out of that draft class disappointed everybody last season. The other guy's not even with him anymore. I can't even remember his name that they drafted that year ahead of ESB.
Jamon Moore.
Yep, Jamon Moore. And then Geronimo Allison is gone. So none of those guys panned out. ESB was hurt last year, so he didn't really get to show any whether that he had any growth or not. So if he did grow any in that offseason and then over the past year, he could definitely work his way into that offense and have some production. So I do not disagree at all. Anthony.
Yeah, I don't love the pick. I mean, we're talking about deep stashes here, so, sure, maybe. But with Devonta Adams, and we talked about Funchess earlier, Lazard, I don't really see the opportunity there unless someone gets hurt. Even if someone gets hurt, he still has to compete with Valdez-Scantling again. A lot of people like, Reggie Bagleton, the Canadian football star who they brought in. So, yeah, I'd rather have him over Bagleton. But, I mean, I would have to have a really deep roster to consider ESB on my squad.
Well, if you're playing Dynasty, you should have a really deep roster. We've said this a couple times. But here's the thing that I'll say to counter that. MVS, Funchess, Lazard, none of the three are guaranteed to be the number 2 wide receiver on this team. The only one that's locked in for production is Adams. Everything else is a question mark on that team, in my opinion. Rob would have to nod his head if he agrees as a Packers fan. I do think they might have a leg up there, but I don't think they're guaranteed guys there, even though I like Funchess as a sleeper. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like ESB. I think, it was a bummer what happened to him with the injury and whatnot. I thought he had a lot of potential, but, this is a new year and he's going to get a fresh start. And like you guys are saying, I mean, there's not much behind Adams, so the opportunity is going to be there, and let's see if he can take advantage of it.
Any last thoughts there, Rob, on your guy while I get the next graphic up?
Yeah, no, I agree with the point you made. That's a good point. Nobody is guaranteed a wide receiver 2 role in this offense. That's up there. There's a wide receiver 3 role in this offense up for grabs. So there's a lot he can potentially fill into there. Somebody's got to catch the football, and we've seen it in the past. Look at Geronimo Allison. Just because Alan Lazard ended up being the guy last year doesn't mean he's the guy this year. By any means.
Right.
Allison went from being the wide receiver 2 3 years ago to the last 2 years he didn't hardly get targeted.
MVS was the number 2 years ago, and then last year lost it to Lazard. And that's kind of what I was saying too. Is you just don't. And if Aaron Rodgers falls in love with you, even if it is for an 8-game stretch, you can have production. So I do agree with that, but I do think it might be a year out when Funchess leaves. Because I think that was only a 1-year deal, right, on Funchess?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I believe it was only a 1-year deal, so it may be another year out, but that's a stash, baby. That's a stash. Okay, my stash is probably not as big of a secret as it was, even a month or two ago. But Isaiah Coulter from Houston, um, right now, I don't think we're going to see a lot of production in 2020 unless that wide receiver room is injured like it normally is, and Will Fuller's hurt, and Brandon Cooks is out with a concussion, and whatnot. But this is a guy that I think has good wide receivers in that room to learn from. The guys in there are talented. The only question is whether they're going to be on the field or not. So he's going to be learning from good guys. Randall Cobb's a good guy to learn from. Brandon Cooks is a good guy to learn from. And Will Fuller's a good guy to learn from. And he's got a stud quarterback that, unless they keep pissing him off, should be there for a long time, right? He should be the face of that franchise for a long time. But this guy is better than Kiki Kuti, I think, right out the gate. And that was a guy that everybody was high on for a while. But yeah, we could see it earlier, and you might have to take him off of your taxi, because if these guys get hurt, look at Greg Ward last year, right? Greg Ward's not as talented as Isaiah Coulter, but once again, touch is equal points. So if these guys get hurt, he's going to be in line for a lot of targets. I like the talent. It's just we might have to wait till 2021 or even possibly 2022 for, sometimes those slot guys take a little bit longer to come to fruition than your outside guys that can just dominate the ball, So we'll have to see where that goes. But Anthony, what are your thoughts there on Isaiah Coulter?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think he's a great stash. I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially down the line, especially with all these injuries that keep happening to that wide receiver core. So, yeah, I think it's a great pick.
Jason.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's like you said, those guys get hurt, Cooks and Fuller. So if that happens and you're banking on it, it's gonna you're gonna reap the reward big time.
Rob.
I 100% agree. In fact, I had him down as my stash initially, and then I went, I don't want to steal everybody from Rick, so let me after last week. So let you have that one.
Yeah, I let these guys put theirs down before I put mine down. So sometimes there's guys on there before I get there that I'm like, man, I would have put those guys down, but there's always somebody else.
Yeah, I really like Coulter. I think he's got a chance if he gets the opportunity to be productive. Even though he was an FCS kid, he's got the size and the speed to be successful, and he showed out in his games against FBS teams as a college player last year. I'm excited for him. I've stashed him in a lot of spots, and really like his future.
Wow. I think that's the first time I've got a unanimous agreement with me. I felt that people just disagreed with me to disagree for a while there, but finally I got one. It was the last one of the episode too. Again, if you're here, we appreciate you guys rocking with us. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. I didn't see many questions. Joss Whedon did say that there's a Josh Gordon decision by Saturday. So if he is available, could the Green Bay Packers or Indianapolis Colts look at him? I think this depends, because I've heard different views of how the new rules are going to go in place. Like, I've heard that guys like Josh Gordon and Martavis Bryant could still get suspended for drugs because they've been in the system. But if they're not, I think every team on the planet is going to be interested in at least taking a look at these guys, if they don't have to worry about them being suspended just for weed. And I don't know if there was ever anything else. They've never explicitly said what it has been with him, but I think we've seen over the last 2 years, like, he still deserves to be on a roster. It's just I don't think the upside is there that once was, but a little bit of production could be. And if nothing else, what we've seen in Seattle for his short stint there was like the defense still has to respect Josh Gordon, so it helps open stuff up for other people on the field. So at the least, if he ended up there, it could help out a T.Y. Hilton in Indy, a Devonta Adams in Green Bay, or we could go down a list of a bunch of other teams that could use a guy like that on their roster, even if it just helps out other guys. Any other thoughts there on Josh Gordon, fellas?
No, I think you hit it pretty well.
Holy shit! What is going on? I feel like the world's about to end. Somebody up there, I think they did not like that I mentioned Isaiah Coulter, so they told me to delete it right now.
Interesting.
So sorry, I can't. It's there forever. I apologize though for telling your league mates about them. Make sure you share this with your friends. I don't see any questions though.
I don't see any either.
I
just ran through both chats.
Nick Young. I gotta give a shout out to Nick Young on Facebook. He's been toting a lot of my guys. So Swaggy P pulling through. I appreciate it a lot.
So he likes bad players too. We got it. No, guys, it was fun as usual. Tomorrow night, make sure you tune in at 9:30 p.m. Eastern for the Fantasy Inferno redraft streaming pod. We're building kind of a little bank of these episodes, and then we are going to be releasing everything and getting it back on all your favorite podcast stuff. I got to train some guys on how to do that. So we're working through that. So they will be available here very soon. Thursday night is the Devy Hour with Rob and Paul. Tomorrow night is
with Brad
and Paul. Tomorrow night is Rob, and Bryce. And then Friday night is myself, Jason, and Craig for the Pyromaniacs DFS podcast, getting everybody ready for the 2020 season. So any last words, Anthony?
No, I think we cover a lot of good players here, and I think we agreed on almost everyone. And I think it was a good show.
Oh, Jaz says I got one question about the 5 spot. What 5 spot?
I got 5 on it.
I got 5 on it too. I'll put 5 on just about anything. These guys will tell you. I'm kind of a degenerate, if we're being honest here. Go ahead, Jazz.
Akers, Swift, or Lamb?
Akers, Swift, or Lamb. Swift's last on that list for me. I'm going Akers, Lamb, Swift. Jason.
I agree, for sure.
Jesus.
Akers, Lamb, Swift has been my list.
Anthony.
I put Lamb last just because of running back scarcity.
Yeah, you're bad. we had 3 rounds of complete agreements with me if you just would have said the same thing. But no, you had to go and mess it up. No, it's great. It's great. Swift's not good though. But yeah, we appreciate everybody stopping by. Jason, any last words?
Check out our social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Discord. Our Facebook group is awesome. Everything's awesome. Just check it all out and ask questions, and we'll help you out as best as we can.
That hat is pretty sharp, too. You can go ahead and order one of those on rotoheat.com. Just hit the merch store. Rob, any last thoughts?
Yes, sir.
No, it was a good show. I'll be gone next week, so see you guys in a couple weeks, and hopefully we've got some training camp news
Sweet.
to talk
Next
about.
week is our best stream to date.
Ooh, okay.
One last thing. If you like what we're doing here with all the streams, the video releases that we do on a day-to-day basis, we would appreciate your support. rotoheat.com/Patreon. We've got different levels of patron a way to help support us. We've got a lot of stuff that we want to do. We have a lot of stuff. Even we're already planning for next off season to get into the 2021 season. But the stuff we want to do is not cheap. So we like providing free content. But if we can get any support from our diehards, we would greatly appreciate it. Again, that is rotoheat.com/Patreon. And whatever you're comfortable with is great for the Roto Heat team, and we appreciate it very much. One last second here, Dave. You better get that monster in there quick before I say later. David says he's got a blockbuster he wants us to grade. We're gonna go on an ABC grade system, and we're gonna be very short about it if he gets it in there. Hurry up, Dave. David. Rob, you're gonna have to cut this section out before it goes to podcast. Mark it. David.
Snip.
David, the meatloaf.
Well, if he doesn't get it in, we can always have him answer that for him tomorrow night on the Fantasy Inferno. So, hey, if he'll come back. So,
mark it down as
redraft.
1 minute and 1 hour and 20 minutes in is where the segment started. David, drop it in the chat. Hurry up. David, the meatloaf. I think David's gone.
I think the block's busted. So it was good.
We can talk about Russell Gage or Boston Scott again if you guys want.
No.
Pass.
Nope. It looks like David, unless this, I guess if it's a blockbuster, it could take a second to type out.
Yeah, if it's a blockbuster question, monster question.
Yeah. David, breathe if you're alive. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to show you so you guys can see the stashes there. For anybody that just got here, we will show you the sleepers real quick. This is the sleepers list that we had talked about today. So if you want to go back in this episode and rewatch, if you showed up late, then there you go. That's what you have to look forward to. And we always appreciate that. Make sure you check out the other videos. We got player outlooks dropping. We've got some other stuff that we are working on at the moment that is going to be dropping leading up to this 2020 NFL season. But again, do we think Preston Williams will be good? My short answer is yes. I think he showed it before his injury last year and was already demanding the most targets on that team over Devonta Parker. So my answer is yes. Rob?
Yes, I think he's good as well.
Anthony?
100% agree with you guys.
Jason?
Yes, sir.
All right.
He's gonna be good.
All right, everybody. Jason's got that cadence in his voice that I'm still getting used to, where he says something and then he's got a pause in between the next part, and I think he's done. And then as soon as I start talking, I feel like I'm cutting him off. I got to get used to that, Jason. You'd think I would by now.
We'll get there.
All right, everybody. Again, we appreciate you. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe. We are literally like 90 subscribers away from 1,000, which is a big milestone on YouTube. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but we appreciate it. We appreciate every one of you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, please. Until next